Welcome back to Introduction to Programming. My name is John Duane and this is video number 2. What we're going to talk about today is a little more on Excel and how Excel macros interact with Excel itself. You may recall from the last video that we said that a computer program manipulates objects, uses data, and creates some sort of output. Right? So that's what a computer program does. Well, let's talk a little bit about these objects. This is important. Most Excel users, they think about the rows, the columns, the sheets, the files. I'm typing, data in. All of those things have a slightly different meaning to the computer programmer. All of the things on an Excel spreadsheet and all the things that make up an Excel workbook, those are all objects. So here I have a list of just some of the objects in the Excel object model. Kind of starting at the top, workbook, the file itself, the workbook file, which contains all the worksheets, that's an object. Every worksheet is an object. Every row in a worksheet, every column is an object. A cell is an object. And then other things that are a little more kind of sophisticated, a pivot table, a chart. Those are all objects. Sometimes objects can be referred to as groups, and the language we'll use for that is collections. So there's collections of the above things here, collections of worksheets. So a workbook is a collection of worksheets as well as other things. So these are objects. We'll be using this terminology quite a bit. The Excel object model can be examined very closely if you actually go into Excel and the Visual Basic development environment, and there's a window that you can raise that'll look like this, and you can get lots of details about the Excel object model. In fact, why don't we do that now? We'll actually go into Excel and into Visual Basic, and here if we go to the View pull down menu and Object Browser, it will show us, make this a little bigger. Here are all sorts of objects in Excel. Let's find one that's kind of familiar. Like a workbook. So there's a workbook object, and then these are all the things that are associated with it. Methods, properties, and things that we'll go into in a little more detail later. The point of me showing you this is that the way to find out about the objects in Excel is very easy to do. You can actually go into the object browser and see them there. So that's the Excel object model and how you can see it actually in Excel. So those objects don't do you a lot of good unless there's data associated with them. Pretty much every Excel macro or every computer program will use data in one form or another. Let's talk about data for a minute. In a computer program, as I point out here, the program stays the same, but the data changes. Now, data can be variable or static, meaning static data is data that is pretty much the same all the time. Doesn't change, it's constant. Or you could have data that changes every time you run the program. In fact, you may, the whole purpose of the program may be to determine to what extent has the data changed. The data can be structured or unstructured. Now, structured data in our context here means it's in a database. So it's a database made up of tables. And all those tables will have rules about how the data is situated in the table. Oftentimes we're forced to use unstructured data, data like in another spreadsheet or data in a flat text file. In those cases, the data is unstructured because there are no rules that require it to be arranged in a certain way. The program is going to connect to the data somehow. So the data could be in our Excel spreadsheet. It could be on a sheet inside the workbook. It could be in a text file, as I mentioned before. It could be in a database, SQL, Access. Data could be out on the web. So data could be in a lot of places, but somehow the program's going to have to get to it. And there are lots of techniques for that. Program output. So here we have the whole purpose of the program is not really the objects and not really the data, but it's the output. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to create a report. You're trying to change an old report. Maybe you just want to create a file that might be used by another process. Output can be an updated table in SQL or Access. So just because it's an Excel spreadsheet with a macro attached doesn't mean that that macro can't update a SQL table at some point. Or as we saw in our Hello World program, the output can be a single value displayed in a pop-up window. Or it could be passed to another program. So where does programming take place? We got a little bit of a feel for that last time, so that's going to be our example today. We're going to go into what's known as the Interactive Development Environment, or the IDE. The IDE has code editor windows, property windows, there's a forms designer, we already saw the object browser, and then there's this project explorer window. So let's talk about that now. This is real basic but really important. So we're going to go to Excel and we're going to close this and kind of start from scratch. So I mentioned before that I would go into a little more detail on how you actually get to that developer tab. In many of your Excel setups you may not have access to it. So let's point out where that is. Okay, so on the Excel options window in Customize Ribbon over here, you can see that there's a whole section for developer. Let's collapse all that. Oftentimes when Excel is installed on your PC, this will not be checked, and as a result the developer tab will disappear, or it won't be there, you won't see it. But if you want it to appear, go to Options, Customize Ribbon, and check that developer option, and the tab will suddenly appear, and there it is. And most of the programming we're going to do is going to take place right in this the interactive development environment, which will pop up as soon as I hit this icon. So let's hit that, and there we go. So here's the interactive development environment, and give you a little sense of what's on this screen. This is the Solution Explorer over here. This is going to display all of the big objects in your program, primarily the sheets in the Excel spreadsheet. You'll see them all here, and then any modules that you create will be shown here. This is the Properties window. Occasionally the thing that you're working on, the object you're working on, will have many properties that you may want to change or examine to see what they are, and this window will help you do that. Now let's open up a code window, or a module here. This is where you'll actually write code. And in the Solution Explorer you can see that there are 3 modules right now. I've got module 1 opened. Go to module 2, module 3. Look, module 3 has our Hello World program still in it. And then there are many very important menus up here that you'll use quite a bit. Um, One of the most important is this one, Insert. So if we wanted to have another module, for one reason or another, we would click that. I'm not going to. I got 3. That's plenty. Well, let's say I wanted to create a user form. So an actual structured form that the user might see, kind of like that Hello World window. I would click here, and I have sort of an artist's palette that I can use to create that form. And now that is also showing up in my Solution Explorer. So later on we'll actually create a form and you'll see how that's done. That's actually kind of a lot of fun. You can use your artistic talents there. So we're going to end it here. Hopefully this has been helpful. We're going to go on to some other important topics in our next videos. So please, if you haven't already, subscribe to this series and post your comments with any questions, and I'll respond. And we'll see you next time. Bye.